Okay, I'm tossed. I did it anyway. I played the crickets, but the first story is maybe not so much crickets. It's showing us that things happen if you get involved. There's no excuses. Before I forget, BTWRLM232, I believe it is. Pastcast, Prodcast, Recast at ucy.tv. That'll be your code behind the Woodshed, Real Liberty Media. And you get the blogcast that I put up after the broadcast and post. Spend hours after posting all this stuff. That allows you to read the stories if you want, do more study, look deeper. There's things to be seen. What I don't talk about, the so-called news that we see, whatever the so-called media is. I've jumped beyond that because it's not about that. It's about us doing action. Crickets has to do with us being done in quiet against a wrong. And the crickets have us by the throat, and each one of us has to eliminate that in our own condition. Not my decision for you all to do. You just have to find the wrong you need to make right, and that's what you do. It's not even a question in my mind that has to happen. Before I forget too much, this other programming note on UCY, and it won't happen for Thursday recast, but Clint Richardson's going to start his broadcast after this broadcast here on UCY.tv. So congratulations that he's coming to the broadcast system again, the network. I'm actually would hope that Jules will put him before me live, and then we can have a constant live day, most of the day for Sunday. But notwithstanding all that, thank you, Clint, for coming back and giving us your information, and maybe we can all eventually work it all together, work it into how to use it. Take this information and how to use it. And I think that's for me it's more and more. It hasn't been a question for me. Actually, I just didn't know if I was seeing the problem as objectively as I thought I needed to early on, but now I'm seeing it pretty clearly. We can have tons and tons of information, and for the most part, I don't see many people understanding how to use it. And so we have to balance how much we know with what we're doing with it. And just to be a big sponge isn't going to get it done. And you'll find out how much you know when you actually start to try and do something. And I think that scares the people a lot. And it's uncomfortable. And they don't want to get out of their comfort zones. And we're in a war, so you're going to be in an uncomfortable position. And I don't say that from any experience because I've never been that. Never been into war. Maybe I was smart enough to stay away from it. Maybe just fortuitous. For all the things that don't go in my direction, for all the stuff that doesn't happen around me, in ways, maybe that some things happened in subtle ways that were more powerful that caused me to be here to talk with you, and hopefully you're here to listen and do something with what I'm saying. So as I was saying, the first report here to us is really not crickets, but I played them anyway. I'm not that production-oriented to start going through a whole lots of other things just to try and keep this all lively and entertaining. It's really not about that either. I do try to show my very subtle humor if there's any there. We try to make it interesting. I try to tie the themes together through all this. Notice I give us the so-called media and the news. And hopefully it makes it interesting enough for people to stick with it. Now, that said, I don't know how many people do, and I don't see a lot of reflection in active people. Over so many years I've been doing this, but there is this contingent of people that are there, have been there, and continue to arrive to help bring this along. As I said, it takes the mass of educated people like Thomas Jefferson told us. Whether I ever understood that before or not, I'm starting to see how that works. And so the enemy went and caused you to be diseducated, undereducated, or miseducated. And so that is what I started to see early on and what I've tried to change for me. And the thing about that, it doesn't stop there. It doesn't stop there because once you fix or realize those problems are there and you start to work on them, then you'll find you have something to do. And it's not just to talk about. And I guess a little bit critical to those of us, most of the people I see, a lot of talkers, a lot of people who claim that there's a problem don't really take action. And that's been a real, kind of astonishing. And I see comparisons, why I'm actually mentioning that. I've said it before, but I mean in more of a context of this knowledge, this awareness and knowledge, is people I don't even know. People that I don't even know that are normal. They don't normally look at things that certainly I or so-called liberty-minded people or anybody like that look at. They're the ones that are starting to step up. There's this silent majority stepping in. They're just us, Americans. That didn't quite. They knew something was wrong, and through different avenues, they're getting more education to be more educated, to be able to understand that the thing they thought was wrong actually was wrong. It wasn't just their perception, but they're also learning, as I try to do here behind the woodshed, explain what those people that have been ruling our lives are, how they're doing it, and then how to stop that, or how to, at least if there's not enough of you, how to interfere with it long enough to maybe some more people can help. And again, we're back to the help and the doing. And so here's a little thing that came up, and I'm not going to claim that we were directly effectual here, but I can just tell you, when we've worked so many years with people, and it's only a certain amount of, there's only a few people that do this, and you choose the people you work with by their capacities and their interest to get something done. And it doesn't take but a moment or even not even maybe a conversation to figure out they're an ally that will work with you and in the direction that's needed. And those are the people you will seek out if you intend to get anything done here in any time soon. But one thing I was talking to you about was a couple weeks ago, and you'll go back to the blogcaster to see it. I said that one of the segment titles after the fact, I said, insane arsonists. If arsonists were insane enough, no, it gets worse. There's insane arsonists out there. And I discussed with you the fires that are going on in the West, how really the policies that provide that they will exist, and they're actually a tool. Essentially, they're a weapon against people inhabiting the West and the agendas we talk about, and it's a foreign imposition. It comes from an insanity. It comes from what they call wilding, where they want people off the earth to let Mother Nature handle this and completely divorce the fact that people are here because of that environment. But notwithstanding all that discussion, I talked about fire. And behind the scenes, and over years, working with a few people, making alliances, and working with those with a like mind and similar capacities, different talents, making the connections that they make, we may have a tangible though not provable response to things that I tell you you can do. It takes time to develop. Yes, it's a persistence, and it can be disheartening at times, but you just keep persisting. People I don't even know are in this lineage of alliance that work together without even really knowing it. We just hand off the part that we have to the next one, carrying the baton to the next place to make the circle. That I talked to you about this fire. I talked to you about the insanity. I talked to you about finding a forest policy. It's a national, United States of America, United States forest fire policy. And I told you only two parts of it that were just prove the insanity within the document. That they would use forest fire, prescription fires during wildfire season, and that they would educate the public to accept the unintended consequences of the highest risk firefighting tool that they had. I also then talked to you quickly last week about how they adulterate the science. Well, because I had to do this study here, just came on me to do. It wasn't something I was focused on, but you couldn't help but notice the smoke all summer. I really don't know that we had a day that wasn't full of smoke all this summertime. Talk about global warming, putting up, ash clouds. What happened to that theory? Causing global cooling. I'll tell you, it's been a pretty cool summer relative to some times that we should have had a little more heat. It wasn't cold, but relative to the normal sequence of heating systems through the summer, it didn't seem to follow the same. So Anyway, notwithstanding all that either, I made some discussion with you about how to analyze, and this is a tool for those of you taking notes on how to do this. And I know I'm having my insight in this that you may not have, but what you're looking for is how to look at what these policies, it's not laws, these are just policies. These may be consensus driven by the stakeholders. It was an interesting word chat, term twist chat in the UCY chat here earlier in the prior broadcasts around stakeholders and eating the steak. Can you have your steak and eat it too with the S-T-A-K-E, or when you have a steak you should just eat it, S-T-E-A-K, and that kind of thing went on. It was kind of, fun exercise with words. The point is the stakeholders, as I told you a long time ago in other broadcasts, have read, they themselves tell, the gurus of that say that stakeholders are criminals. And so you see this climate thing coming on in December. That's a bunch of criminals getting together, and a bunch of criminals getting together is organized crime. It's not real hard to figure out what's going on with us and how these people are influencing your nations, all your nations in the world. They bring on policies like what we saw was insane arsonists using fire during fire season. And then you might get someone from a federal agency to help fight a fire that you need to put out because they're so interested in the prescription side and not the suppression side, and certainly not the pre-suppression mitigation, which happens in your proper management of your forests. Well, I told you about all that. We did an analysis on the policy, only speaking to how you take that policy and you destroy it with respect to your local county power. Now we're jumping into police power where conflagration is something you don't want, and it's something that when it shows up it becomes the only thing. And it's the only thing in your life until you stop it. And hopefully you're managing your forest so that it's able to be put down. If it's not able to be put down, then you're mismanaging the forest. It means it's a class 3 level, and it's only nature can put that out. It doesn't matter. Once you get into class 3, you might as well not fight it. There's really no reason to spend the money at that point, and that's what they do. And then they give the excuse that, well, we can't fight it because we can't put it out anyway. The problem is that those fires are sterilizing fires, and they absolutely harm the environment, as I mentioned last week as well, and then the week before. Well, just in 2 weeks, folks, and then that document, I'm assured by a couple of people I trust highly that have developed their lines of communication, which if you want to do something, you're going to have to do this. You're not doing these things on your own. That the chain of communication that I understand has been developed, what the people that I work with, the document, that analysis I did on how the policy makes no sense, has no science, is really a weapon, not a tool, has no bearing on actual law regarding fire, has made it quite a ways. And into a couple, again, I tell you, you can't just talk amongst yourself. You got to put it in the hands of people that make decisions. And I'm telling you this only not to really say that we've done anything, because I don't even know that. What I'm saying is that I find it fascinating, the coincidence, how fast this came together with the chain of communication available. That even though I don't know this happened, it's highly consequential that it had an influence to people who make decisions. That based on this fire action and really the level of change that happens in the middle of this shift between the pretense of a fire management, going from fire management, which a pretense is of a tool, into this new rule, memo that came out from the Secretary of Interior, Ryan Zinke, was quite astonishing to happen in 2 weeks. Knowing knowing of the communication system that's gone on, communication lines, and who's doing what, and independent of anything else that's going on and what we're actually doing, all of a sudden we get some feedback that's completely different than anything we've seen for decades now, that I told you was possible when I was showing you about Trump running. That if the same regime, the same type of people get into office, people have no chance. Production will be destroyed. You're going to watch more of this nonsense. That it wasn't that Trump was anything more special than what he would bring in would be at least a cessation of the war against us in certain areas. That I think we're getting that evidence, and we're getting it really very particular to inputs that I know a group of the network, if you will, that has developed around what we do has at least a door to. However, and I don't know these people, I just know that it's there. Secretary Zinke directs interior bureaus to take aggressive action to prevent wildfires. Now, you'd think that would be common, this normal sense about things. I hate to use the word common sense because that common sense has become insanity. And then, as I understand now, anybody who questions insane people, they're skeptics. How does that work? And how's that working for you? This is a big deal for me. I don't know about those of you that think about fire and all this other thing in your public lands, in your private lands, and the devastation that fires can have in the West. Maybe not so much in the East, unless you live near a national forest that's mismanaged this way. But the title is not really the story here. The aggressive action can always be defined as a demurred type point. But when you read the first paragraph, it starts to make very clear and coincidentally to what I was advancing through the people that had their thoughts and applied what I was saying to what they needed to do in through state and county powers, and identifying that the state powers are actually corrupt and derelict. And so, let me read the first paragraph. There's a lot to actually say about this, and you may not think it's important, but this is evidence of a lot of things I tell you. The fruition, not a complete fruition, but the fruition of how this thing really works, that you do have something to say, and you don't use the courts, for those of you that hate that system, and you go to the state for permission. This is finding people within the system that have the decision to make, that have decided to take on this juggernaut that has been set up to defeat it as a weapon and a foreign power within our system. And if you don't see it at that level, you're not looking. You've got your eyes taped shut, because you can actually see through your eyelids this thing is happening. Why? Because your skin's on fire and you can't breathe. It's pretty simple. So if you don't see how that's a problem, for those of you having to suffer that, and you're not looking into helping, then you're just agreeing to this insane arsonists that are going to destroy our world. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, but it mimics the whole plan. That when you have people that have a principle in them, things change immediately. So the title doesn't really give us what the aggressive action might be, but it says it's a policy shift, at least from the highest level of the Department of Interior, of which most of your western states, around half of all the land and more in some instances, is owned, and I'll say it this way, it's not owned by the agency, it's not owned by Congress, though they have title. It's owned as a trust obligation for disposal, and you'll prove that in your enabling acts, or pretty quickly, where the states ceded the land to the United States, but it was for the purpose of disposal. So it wasn't a cession like you hear in the Constitution of a needful buildings thing. This is a cession for the purposes, and the intended purpose of that was to eliminate all state claims in the future to the land that would be disposed to the people. So the people had free and clear of any so-called monarch, sovereign, that would be the territory within which those inholdings would be. So you would have literally private property beholden to no one. Now, I hope you listen to what I just said there. Beholden to no one, not even the government. But the federal government has this capacity to manage these lands. In 1976, they did a breach to the enabling acts, and no state has stepped up to enforce their provision. They stepped up to stop the Congress, saying we're going to maintain possession of these lands. That's a complete breach of the enabling acts of every Western state. So there's another clue for another problem. Let me get to this broadcast, report here. News to us, which is fully notice. And if you look between the lines, you see some very important statements. Just the first paragraph here. Today, this is a couple days ago, United States Secretary of Interior Ryan Zinke directed all Department of Interior bureaus, superintendents, and land managers at all levels to adopt more aggressive practices using the full authority of the department to prevent and combat the spread of catastrophic wildfires through robust fuels reduction and pre-suppression techniques. Pre-suppression technique. This is before the fire gets started. The only thing I know of, when we look at that, how aggressive this is now, it's a sea change compared to where the caucusocracy, the bureaucrats inside the culture of crime that makes up the bureaucracies of the agencies of the federal government. This is a sea change to that culture. Pre-suppression techniques can only really mean one thing, and that's getting the fuel loads out of the forest. And the only way you can do that is not by thinning, but by harvest. And what that ends up implying is that's revenue to your counties. So there's a big deal right there just in seeing the pre-suppression. With respect to the fires, the county has a power, the police power, health, safety, welfare, morals, etc., to invoke that police power to stop these fires wherever they are. Remember, as a trust holding owner in the state and concurrent jurisdiction, the United States government is only a proprietor there as a trustee. It's not an all-powerful sovereign that can stop because of its presence, say we're going to let fire run amok across the territory and into private areas. So this statement, coming 2 weeks after a concerted effort by a number of people that I know, not just the people who, this is not speaking to those that are emotionally connected to the fires in their places and don't know what to do but know it's not right and know of better technology, better techniques to fight fires and having the questions about why wasn't these fires being fought and all this other thing and why'd they let them go. Not those people. I'm talking about looking from the in administrative policy side, combining that with the view that there's a police power in your local county that gets invoked that nobody can stop. There's no environmentalist that can complain that you're stopping a fire. And there's still people in these counties that have yet to see this relieve themselves of this so-called fear. I don't know what these people are all afraid about, that they won't go fight a fire. Now, that's not saying that sometimes you literally cannot fight a fire. They literally can be too dangerous. That's not what I'm talking about here. It's the fact that we have an agency secretary that has said now there's going to be a robust fuel reduction and pre-suppression technique going to happen, contrary to what's been going on. Absolutely 180 degrees C shift, which I read as a harvest right and connected to these fires, which is what we've been advocating for 3 years with certain counties, that they have a police power to go in and take some, when the mismanagement happens of the forest, they have the right to go in, also based on the law that says they have the right to use these things as their power to eliminate or reduce the threat of catastrophic or non-stoppable fires in their territories, the county jurisdictions. That this statement says that I want to just tell you, without even having the proof, it may take us a while and we may not seem like we're doing much, but the connection between what I was just telling you just 2 weeks ago, when that wasn't even a factor, and what they're talking about, the specificness of what they're talking about here relative to what we were talking about, cannot be mistaken. And though I wouldn't take the claim we said that and did that. In other words, what I'm saying is that you can be effective too. What I will say is, if we weren't here, we wouldn't know that we were contributing to the outcome, not the solution outcome, but the actual action that needs to happen in all these lands. That we now have, as I look at this is the DOI's, the Secretary of Interior's, this is the main public land manager. Because under FLTMA, the same act that stole the land back from the states, the Congress stated we're going to keep this in our possession, which is a breach. That act consolidated the Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management Authority. And the Forest Service has a secondary position, which is subject to that. And there was a repeal at the same time of their rules over managing their forest. In other words, it's really consolidated down into, there is a Forest Service authority, but it's not free of the FLTMA, the Federal Land Management Policy Act. And the Secretary of Interior takes essentially the overriding prevailing authority here, in particular for these fires. That this DOI announcement that you will now robustly and aggressively do pre-suppression techniques for fire mitigation is a license for the counties to step up, as they should have already, underneath that provision, to start the fire, stop the fires, notwithstanding any obstruction by the Forest Service or of BLM, which the BLM isn't necessarily a problem, because they usually go to the local state authorities, I believe, for fire. What's your problem there is probably going to be your state governors. As a matter of fact, I'll say it this way without being able to, I cannot divulge any sourcing on this. I'll just tell you what I was told, that they're not going to fight the fires. Let me put it this way. The National Guard was called up by the governor of Oregon, and the word is to them, they're not going to be fighting any fire. And so I'll put it this way. I'll be surprised, unless it's by this conversation today to you, that the notice gets out to them that we just said that they're not going to fight the fire because there's a plan not to fight the fire, and now they start fighting fire. I'll be happy to be wrong because of that. But the plan right now that I've been told is that the National Guard that was called up to kind of convey to all that there's something going on, that the governor called a conflagration, has a conflagration order, that it will fight tooth and nail to stop the fires. That National Guard that's been called up has been told they're not going to go fight any fire. They've been stationed in places. In fact, people are stationed in places and not going to fight the firing. And I'm told that they cannot, from another source, they're not getting paid when they go to a place away from the county that they got pulled from and to not fight a fire and sit there. They're also not able to go back to their jobs because they're on call 24/7 in that place. They're not at their jobs, so they can't get work. And so these people who have been called out of the National Guard cannot get money to feed their families. It's how insidious this whole thing starts to become when you start looking at who's pulling the strings and who should not be pulling the strings. That conflagration order and police power will eliminate a conundrum over. And so my suggestion, as I've been trying to suggest, is based on the findings that I put together about how the fire policy is really an insanity and in short order can be found to, which shows the power of the county to step in to, since the policy does not meet the needs of the people and the things of county concern or its police power, those things that fall short in that fire policy, the national forest policy, are the things that you use to invoke your police power. This fuels reduction and pre-suppression techniques order allows the county on that police power to go in and do what it needs to do. The problem, I'm told, is that there's no directed money for these things to do. And I guess that can be an excuse. But the way I know this works is you go out as a fighting unit and you fight, and if you have bills, you bill them later. Because the whole point is you go fight the fire. I don't know how many forest fires I've been out on. You went out as a volunteer. You just went out and fought the fire. You did. And at the time when it's your town going to burn, you go out there and fight that fire. You're looking for a crew to jump onto. I didn't have to be paid to go out. Just grab me the tools that they say we're going to need, and you run. You get in a van and you go. You organize the units. They have to get paid. Okay, so you make a bill. That's what all that's about. There's really no excuse for the money. The money's there when a conflagration goes in. It's just a matter of when you're going to get it. And so if that means that people have to volunteer, if you had to make a volunteer fire crew to go out and fight underneath a local declaration of police power declaration of stopping the harm the fire and the conflagration is making, you do that. And I don't know why you couldn't pull from your local coffers, those that may have some leftover emergency coffers, your emergency funds, pull that out to pay for whatever it costs in the moment. Those costs you can't defer or bill for. Why this order from the Secretary of Interior for all these public land fires is not a license, if I needed one, to go fight those fires, I don't know. But I just wanted to point out to you folks, I'm really sitting back a bit saying, no, this can't be what we've done. I'm being assured this is partly in direct relationship to a handful of people been working on these problems, and it reached the place it needed to reach, and the answer came out the way it was supposed to be. And so I'm really, for as much as we do, and I'd like to say take all these things, as well, this is what we've done, I'm being tempered, but I have to tell you that in looking at the coincidence, it's too connected to what was being done and said in the subject matter, the specific subject matter areas of the contributions that were made. That I can't disregard the fact that I want to tell you again and to remind you, for everyone wants to kick the dirt, look in the sky, make excuses, say you can't go to the system. No, you go to people within the system. That's how we do this. We understand the problem, and we take back from the plunderers the booty. You just take it back. And police powers is I've known this for a long time. I've been trying to talk to people through my chain of communication to other people in seats of decision to convince them and show them that this is the power in the seats of decision for local governments to step in. With this order, you can do setback harvesting, not thinning. Forget this thinning for the West counties because they won't get any money. Whatever costs it's taking, in particular for volunteer forest fighter systems, those things I'm sure will be negated as soon as you start doing the harvesting you need to put your counties back into the protective Class 1 state. You do your setback harvests off the roads, 50, 100 feet, whatever you deem. A forester will have to decide this. I'm not deciding. I'm just saying here's the idea. Here's what you do. You go and do your salvage logging because there's a couple fires in the west are shown the fires went through and burnt hotter and more sterilization went through from a previous fire that was let burn because of all the standing timber and the stuff that's fallen on the ground. I've read an argument just recently looking at that there's been an argument by the environmental terrorists that harvesting, there's a statistical relationship between harvesting and the increase in fires. And I'm looking at that, and that didn't make sense right off the bat, but let's look at it because there's somebody talking from what appears to be an authority. Lots of doctors' names on this, lots of studies, lots of things going on about the officialness of this. But remember, I've got a skeptical eye about this. See, I'm actually questioning the insanity, so I'm a skeptic, I suppose. That didn't sound quite right. How do you cut out the trees and have it increase fire? What's the point here? And we got to find out about that. We don't want to cut trees if it's going to increase, right? So that was their argument, these insane people. But then you start reading what they're talking about, and always these people will never give you the right context. They will leave out important information. They will not actually do the study quite right to what it was really fully explained. And the answer ends up being, and I'm telling you all this stuff because this is what happens when you start bringing sane policies back. These insane people start getting pretty irate, start throwing a bunch of stuff in your face, and you're going to have to be able to answer that. And it's pretty simply answered just by educating yourself. The educated masses can handle this. You educate yourself, and I've done a precursory review. I am not an expert, say. I am not done more than what I've done in my life. I've not studied this, and I don't know that I would have wanted to university study this because it's all been an adulteration. But you read the fact of it, and those statistics did prove that harvesting did cause an increase of fire. But what was it? It wasn't the harvesting. You find out the real simple answer was it was the mistreatment of the slash, the limbs that they don't pull out. Now, I don't know about many people, and we have some people in the RLM chat that are into they're fire loggers, they're harvesters, they're firefighters. They may have seen some that I certainly haven't, but I have not yet in my life in a timber harvesting in a forested area, a large forested region. I've never seen a harvesting situation that the slash wasn't dealt with. They deal with it usually by just piling it up and burning it. And there's lots of risk with all this. Fire is never an easy thing to deal with. Some of those fires do get away from it because someone doesn't quite do it right. But there was never been a forest I've seen in my experience, which isn't everywhere. I'm not a logger, forester, none of that. But I've always seen in the area that logging is done in the area I've been done, which I've understood has been a high-quality harvesting area. They do it right. Except for the occasional slash burn fire in the fall that gets away from someone who didn't pay attention, there is no slash to cause an increase in fire. So the quick answer to all this hair-pulling fear and terror about the increase of logging wasn't the logging, it was the mistreatment of the slash, and that can be dealt with. They can do that on a couple of levels. So when I see this issue, turn around, where they just want to use fire to burn you out and smoke you out and rewild and de-people the productive watershed. This is a breath of fresh air. To be so on point with it, with the submitting information just 2 weeks ago, folks, it was, this has been an ongoing question, but to have it come back so specific to what we were saying, I really just don't know what to think about it. I want to not say that we weren't that integrated, but what that tells me, whether or not we were, you need to get involved, whoever you is out there listening. You need to figure out what the problem is. You need to set up a plan on how you're going to do what you're going to do. As I explained to you, you need to find those people that can help what you can't do to move the baton along. And I'm suggesting to you strongly to do that, because what you find, which I wouldn't have never known how this would have worked, that there are networks of people that develop around these causes that can actually get something done. Now, I won't go on the rest of the story. I'm spending a lot of time here just on this one. I didn't really intend to do that, but that's how this works. When you look at reality, you can answer the insanity that has become the models of our lives. And those models are set up to kill people, to enhance wild nature, which is uncontrolled. And it has devastating effects. And the clearest example is the wildfire condition. What I'm saying is not utopia. What I'm suggesting and observed is not the end-all be-all. Doing productive work in the forest is not easy work. It's not simple. It's fraught with dangers. It's fraught with just difficulties that are real stuff. But that all said, it is manageable. The difficulties are manageable. And that's what we have to go back to, what the university stopped teaching people. And so we really got to get back to the reality of what goes on. This order is a really big deal. I don't know that it's yet in the minds of county commissioners to understand what this says to them. I think there's a lot of people that are in fear of some sort of retaliation, which I just asked a friend of mine. He's a fire ecologist. He's been trained the way you're supposed to way back when, before the adulteration. And I said, what's the fear of everybody? Why don't they just go fight the fires? And he doesn't really understand it either. We're kind of talking amongst ourselves. We don't understand what is the fear. What is going to happen to you when you go fight the fire? Just because an agency says they're not going to, that makes the law that no one else can? I've never seen that in my life. If that's what's ruling the day, we got to think about us, ourselves. Who are we? What will happen to us? So there's a way through this. There's a way through the smoke and the flame, and to put it out. Way through the smoke to put the flame out. So I think we've been advocating police power. Why? Because that's the highest power. That's to protect everyone, even the arsonist, the insane arsonist, if you will. If you don't have money, so you go volunteer. If you have a little bit of money, you can put it on those incidentals that you can't forego the price of, and then you get your billing later, or you set up a system to work your what they call here the robust fuels reduction and pre-suppression techniques. You use those to bring the timber harvest up underneath this protection to bring the revenues back to your counties, to bring back the costs of fighting. And I'm assuming maybe a bit here, but that I think will be covered pretty handily. And so we've been advocating this whole thing, and here it is finally. How you go about doing it is simply do robust fuels reduction and pre-suppression techniques. Is a long way to say start harvesting. And for those of ecologists out there, or the environmentalists that are worried about increased logging increasing fire, how about you make sure, which they've done in every other case I've ever seen, how about you just deal with your slash, and then you won't have that problem of increased fire relative to harvesting. See, what maybe people don't understand is when companies go in, at least in the area, in the region I'm familiar with, and I'm sure that there's differences everywhere, in the region that I'm in, the companies build the roads. The companies build them to a standard. The companies are maintaining the fire. The companies are liable to all this. It's all in their contracts. It's all done when they go through. Accidents happen, but they're dealt with. And it's not so bad that they've ever, if I'm in my imagination or of my memory or my imagination, thinking about how nasty could it get if I wanted to scare myself. But I've never seen the type of problems we're having today since all that has been stopped. And so they privatized the action like they did with the miners. Same thing with timber, and it functions really, really well. Now, it doesn't catch everything, so that's why you have thinning projects and these kinds of things. Sometimes it doesn't. The productive side is a little bit faster, a little bit harsher, and so you have to do some management of that. But there's ways to do things that contractually now, and it's usually tied to some also financial problem. If you don't, you get people that will do the job. And the job is done to what the universities used to show us was the more proper way. And they always studied to see what more proper was. That I wanted to say again, for those of you that are listening, that have an in to your county commissioners that are in fire areas, to me, this first paragraph is the license to take on what the county police powers already offered the counties. If anybody needed any help, here it is. That the DOI is not going to have a problem with doing this where you can see, and hasn't happened, the local management or the culture is not conducive to it. Police power tied to this and harvesting to clear out the most dangerous areas would be something that I don't see there's any liability to. Now, I'm not saying it's a harvesting thing yet. I'm saying that's how you get into the point. You start the system back up through the conflagration, through the potential of it, and through this order saying you get to stop it. You have a power independent of the federal agency. I don't know why they haven't been using it. Why they wring their hands or why they get together and talk about it amongst themselves is really kind of a question to me. But whatever's happened in the last couple of weeks has caused this to come out, and I'm suggesting to the listeners here, you got to look very carefully at the dynamic. It may not mean anything to you, but then you haven't been really paying attention, no matter what your thoughts are, because these things are object lessons for really how it can be done. They wouldn't say this if that can't happen. It couldn't just happen. And this is not idle words. As I said, we don't know what aggressive action. I mean, aggressive action could be thumbing through a book harder. I don't know, but this is not. Pre-suppression techniques. There's only one thing I know that could be a pre-suppression, a pre-fire catastrophe point that solves it, and that's to manage your forest by harvesting properly. So I'm saying so you make sure your slash is taken care of. Now, so I'm repeating myself. This is if the local counties didn't understand their power and their police powers to stop a fire, here is the federal government has handed the reason here to you again to continue to start up if you didn't. And then, without it being a harvesting policy contingency, keep it in the fire. Then you turn people, while you're doing this, onto complying with the federal law that also says you have sustained yield at capacity. Whether that's on a Forest Service, Forest Reserve, under the Forest Service, or a special land underneath the BLM, or just a public land that's just supposed to be improved production in the watershed. Not the landscape, not the view shed, none of that nonsense. The watershed, the productive watershed. This is the starting back into that. This is back to what I was telling you. We were going to have very narrow places to regain control after the insanity of all these other regimes in Washington. Trump would allow, maybe not directly, he would allow a cessation of that constraint. And this is one of the outflows of it, whether he intended it or not. I'm telling you it's here because we're looking for it. That's what has to happen once there's a different mind that is working. And this different mind has now come up responding to what has been being given to it to respond to accurately, correctly. I know there's a lot of people talking about it, so I'm certain that we couldn't have been the only thing. And the only thing I can tell you again is that our discussion was so constrained to what we're seeing here that I'm having a hard time, even though I'll deny it, I'm having a hard time disagreeing with my my colleagues that this is a part of what we were doing, what we are doing. In fact, it has force and effect eventually. And so for me, that's great stuff for me that's happening. We need to stop this, but I'm really looking for tools for y'all that are either on the fence or maybe not quite getting it worked out or think you need to know more. What's there to know about a fire? This is a very easy object lesson to understand how we fail against insane policies. Up until here, an insane arsonist in the agency of the Federal Forest Service has been having its way with everybody. Why would you put yourself in subject to that kind of a thing? I don't understand it. When everywhere I look, the governments have, in the United States of America, have this police power, which I told you they're using against you at one level. Well, why weren't we going to it to use it to protect us? It's always been an observation for me, but here is something we get to work on. We get to work on it to educate us as to see what the more rational thing to do has been. Find that maybe we have not used the power of the law that sat there for us to protect ourselves and to fortify us in those things and take that momentum and put them into other areas. Right now it's harvesting to reduce the fuel load for fire. Harvesting because that brings revenue to the county. And then move with people focusing on, now you have a machine now beginning to start back up for harvesting for purposes of fuels reduction. Now you get that habit started again. Focus people then back on forcing compliance with the harvesting laws altogether. And we're not making utopia, but I think our world becomes a little bit more organized, a little bit better, and things function a little bit better. People start having work and jobs, and there's industry going on behind that. There's a secondary and tertiary support industries that come up, and we get back into people just doing what they like to do, all coming from Mother Nature in a proper way, that we're not being... That is not being used as a chain to bind us. So another thing moving on, another chain that binds us is us plugging into these systems, agreeing with the oppressor that we need to be oppressed, agreeing with insanity that we need to live an insane life, having those insane people running the asylum, plugging ourselves into those systems. As I've been trying to say, watch what's going on here with this technocratic world coming on. They really are. They really got a control of this. They're in pretty powerful seats of decision. The insane are running the asylum. What are you going to do about it? And so when I see that, I start looking around for, if you're not paying attention, maybe it's so tightly because you're not maybe interested because you don't think it's going to affect you. Like everybody who didn't understand this summer that the smoke would be affecting them. All of a sudden now they can't breathe, they can't see, can't do anything, or it's highly uncomfortable. You plug yourself or allow a system to come up around you that controls your life. How are you going to feel when you can't do much? How are you feeling when that external force is now invading your so-called freedom, interfering without any warrant to be there? And there's reasons to not have it there. Is one of the themes I keep bringing up behind Woodshed into the future here, from the past into the future, where they want this whole thing to go. No different than the insane arsonist will rule your life if you allow it, even though there's laws that would stop it immediately, stop it in its tracks. We allow systems to be developed up around us and don't recognize the warning signals that little examples here and there show us the problem. Now, we tend to divorce ourselves from those problems because they're over there with those people on that problem, and I've got mine today. But I need to, because I see this as the path of perdition, if you will, because it's principleless. It has no principle to work, and then you'll have none to rely on when you get there. I just need to continue to call this out. Payment system glitch causes widespread power outage in Papua New Guinea. Payment system glitch causes widespread power outage. How does that work? And this is how topsy-turvy everything starts to get when you plug yourself into one system. When the power that's available there, it goes awry. When something else that's an insanity causes an ability to change the power structure. Tens of thousands of Papua New Guineans have been without electricity for the past 2 days because of an electronic payment system glitch. PNG Power's prepaid Easy Pay system failed on September 11th, leaving the customers unable to top up their accounts. Prepay top up. Digital. No electricity to pay for the electricity. What? The company promised to have the system restored by midnight on September the 12th, but failed to do so. No, I'll just stop right there. You can leave more. There's more to read. There's more to see here how this dynamic is. So you're relying on a privatized system, and the people that are the persons, the businesses that are there, fail to do as they're promised. It's like your government failing the public trust. What are you going to do about it? Why do you allow a system that requires that? Why do you allow systems to be developed that don't have an alternative? Why aren't they compelled to provide the power notwithstanding the problem? Why is this a problem? Does anybody look at this? Well, apparently not. Because it just happened. Now I want to put it in your lap. You're allowing a system of technology to be up around you that's doing the same thing. You're not going to be able to get these things until you get on that easy pay system. You won't have power unless you do it. And then they can have a glitch. Someone can hack it. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. Don't know. You're not having the power is the bottom line. And what about you going to get food? Everything goes to the electronic system. Oops, we had a problem. We promised to get it online. Oh, we can't. And that's the straight up one. What about the one where the government looks in and says, oh, these people did something we don't like, and we have this little due process thing we claim we did correctly under the Constitution that gives us the power to steal their stuff, flick off their switch. What's the difference here? Whether or not you couldn't pay, or whether or not they said we're not going to honor what you paid. What are you going to do about it? Is really prevalent lessons here about this thing. These people are on an island, and they got shut off, and they're done. And apparently there's no way to fix it, folks. I mean, does that even make a rational sense to you that could be possible? I mean, in reality, not the way they fabricate it. So this condition where you put yourself into an electronic privatized system, the switch can be flipped whether you want it or not, and then the tail wags the dog, doesn't it? And then it's a vicious loop of lack of responsibility and no accountability. This is the world you live in, and you can see around right now. That's a definition for today, and we don't really recognize it. It's over there, but it's around you already, and there's more systems coming online with that model that we are not just looking at and saying, wait a minute, that's not going to be adequate. There's not enough contingencies there. You're serving us, notwithstanding you consider us a consumer. You're serving us. This is not a consumer without rights. This is we the people allowing you to make a profit on the so-called services you provide. And when you get us to our necessities, you have a very high standard to meet. It isn't met by a promise not met and a system that causes its own self-inflicting wound. So we don't start paying attention. That's the type of systems the mediocrity comes on. That's the type of systems you get. They gave you those systems. You got what you gave. You got a republic if you can keep it. You got what you were gave if you could keep it. Do people have power now over there in Papua New Guinea? No. Did they keep what they were gave? No. Simple rule and lesson right there in the news. It's our notice if we'll pay attention. And that's just one little spot. You give over power to an insane system. Don't have no complaint that you're now getting burnt by the conflagration that was set up for it, or the food that's rotting because you didn't protect yourself with a system that would be redundant against the failure of power in your locale. So we are now bringing up this idea the governments can turn stuff off, the public-private partnerships can turn things on and turn things off, all at whatever reason. They can promise and then not fulfill for whatever reason. And you're sitting there with rotting food and no power, sitting in the dark. You caveman. You cave woman. You actually cave human, because that's what they're keeping you, remember, like monsters. Because you have no rights, you got no inheritable blood. You got to even have the property you're sitting on, because you don't know about property. You are property. How many things do I bring around all the time? It's all the same story. Jump in the system, find your place in the system of the technocracy, and you become your power structure. Your life is affected by whomever can flick the switch. I'm on record about this cashless society, the way it's coming down with this Bitcoin model. I think the technology, again, I think it's really cool, but it's not so simple. And last week I talked to you about China flicking the switch. And I also said they did it concurrently with them creating their own. China did. And it was a model with 1.5 billion people. They were the model state, nation state. Just a nation, not a state, but that's a member of another system. They were the model for being able to control 1.5 billion people. The rest of you aren't going to be much trouble. That they control the model of that. They control the system, and they control who can use it. It wasn't just days after I told you they were going to control this. The private currency, it's not currency, they can call it whatever they want, the private electron money, and just days later, China's 3 largest Bitcoin exchanges will all stop offering local trading. Cryptocurrencies are going to be controlled. They will not exist, and what do exist will eventually be controlled. I hear lots of libertarian, so-called libertarian mind, oh yeah, but we can do this and that. Fine. Remember, when they catch you, it's not going to be simple. And you can say, oh, I don't care, I'll wait till I get caught. Well, how about if you just stop it now? How about if we don't do all that? How about if we take a responsibility for ourselves now? Right here, as I said, it's coming through. How fast this is coming at us. It's even reported in this little article. Well, that didn't take long. Yesterday, China's longest-running Bitcoin exchange, BTC China, announced it will suspend its local trading service at the end of this month. And today, the country's 2 other major exchanges, Huobi and OKCoin, followed suit to say they will cease at the end of October. Enough writing there. These digital currencies, so-called, are controllable. I just paused here for a while. That should be enough said. Now there's this run up and this big extravaganza going on the West, as I told you. That's a plan. That's a setup for a takedown. And some of you may work out real well. And I'm not really condemning the cryptocurrency. I do think it's a cool tool. But you better anticipate how much you're going to deal with that and what you're going to do when they start to come locking it down. Where are you going to go with your asset, with your wealth, whatever you're doing with the medium? What are you going to do? Think ahead, I guess, is the main thing. The writing is on the wall. This is going to go to a global cashless system. They've got it worked out. It's going to go there because no one opposes it. And the power, the people that can hurt you, the governments, that thing that what Washington said you fear like the fire, the conflagration that everyone is questioning how to put out. Boy, what a story what a corollary that is. The fearful master, like fire, fearful master the government is. The power of the government to hurt you is there always. That's what they seem to be like anymore, even though there's a better model about what the government was supposed to be. And we saw it in the United States for a brief glimpse, and mining districts are the example of it's continuing, given you understand what you're looking at. That China's shutting down Bitcoin. That's just the cover for the blockchain that's privatized. This is a global plan that's coming on you. And if you don't have a substantial not in an amount, but a substance, something substantial in your hands, the reason how we got here the way we are with respect to so-called money and currency, really money for the people, currency for the nation, you're missing the point. And I have to chuckle about the oxymoron. Someone who's of a libertarian mind talks about Bitcoin. Someone talking against fiat currency, and they agree with Bitcoin. We got a real big glitch in our minds, I can just tell you that. We got a disconnect in reality. And that disconnect is what is going to be used against us. So we better get real tight on what's really going on, or else we're going to, again, be the accessories to the crime against us and not have a place to say it. Not have a place to argue it. Not have a place to defend ourselves. And as my experience is showing, not know how. And that's my, I guess, really, as I say that, I'm just crushed a bit for you all. And it's not because I'm knowing so how. I'm just, at least I got an idea in my mind how to approach certain things. I'm going through a emergency thing that just came up for somebody else. And I'm realizing the people that need to be doing this aren't doing it. We are. And I look around and there's no one else that can help. Are you that way? I don't know what to say here. Are you that way that you want to talk about all you know and don't know how to affect it? You want to talk about all the constitutional things, or denounce them so you don't have to, I guess is the other nonsense about denounce the Constitution. No, or embrace it and find out there's limitations and then be responsible enough to step up. Do you know how? How many people do I know, and you won't have this answer because I don't even know, but how many people, rhetorically, how many people do I know that talk about all the constitutional rights and they couldn't affect one to defend themselves? Is really astonishing to me. And I'm not talking about the corruption they walk into that allowed it because they didn't keep what they were gave. I'm talking about just, do you know? Would you know the first thing to do to actually affect those things that there were limitations in the Constitution? And when I see people engaging, decry fiat and then engage Bitcoin, I don't know what to think about you all that do that. I'm not really judging you. I'm just wondering what's the thought in your brain really? What are you telling yourself? And then to not really work to protect yourself, even for yourself, let alone for others, and guide them by your example. And there's plenty of people that look at my example and decry it. So I'm not saying that that's an answer either. In fact, there's lots of people that don't like me. And I've told you, so if they don't like me, then I'm not the guy I can't speak to those people. But maybe I know someone that can. And when they understand what's going on, they'll understand the importance of why they have to go explain that, because they can. So what I can't do, that other one might, and we get the point made eventually, is what I've been trying to, I convey to you every week behind the Woodshed, that this China is coming out in a strong way, that you need to watch how this works, because this is no joke. This is somewhat of an insanity, because what you're walking into is the dystopia that everyone wants to complain about. It's coming on you because you're not resisting it in the proper way. You're allowing yourself to be plugged in, silent weapons for quiet wars, and that is one of the weaknesses. And yet that is one of the tools that allows it, because if we didn't have this digital world, I couldn't speak to you today. Probably wouldn't know anything. You probably wouldn't know anything about me. We wouldn't have it into the future in the archives. We wouldn't have a sense of ourselves. We'd have our little communal tribes like they want to put back on us. It's not that, folks. That's another lie. The unity is a lie. It all seems to be a lie. And the only thing that's not a lie is something that's objective within you that you found is not just a bunch of just nonsense. It looks like it's real, really working out what's the real. What is really going on? As I say, when I look out and see how few people know how to effectuate all the so-called constitutional provisions they know about, I'm just flabbergasted. How do you function in the world? Why do you waste your time? And I look around and it seems like a lot of people will be willing to waste their time. And a lot of people are clueless to the time they waste. And a lot of it, I think, is solved when you get out and do something. And so now I always wonder why people don't get out and do something, because I think inside they know that'll solve that. And they'll be doing something and then they don't want to do that because they'd rather be doing something else, whatever that is. The digital systems plug yourself in. It's been made for you to address you. Digital money, it's put there for you to accept, so it will eventually control you. Oh, it comes out that it's anonymous. It comes out that it's decentralized. It comes out all kinds of things. And you're missing all the other clues that says, oh, that's not really the truth. But you put those away. Oh, they're not an insane arsonist, and you put it away. You let the insane arsonist watch the fire, keep you from going and fighting it, and that's an authority, and you do that to yourself. With all the power to stop it and to end the nonsense, and you don't. Not plugging in where you shouldn't, you do. I've been telling you, they're going to offer these gifts to you, and you're going to agree. Former Facebook executive says Google and Facebook are surveillance states. Now, is that even a surprise? After all we've covered it, and anybody else who's been in looking at this, the surveillance states. Now, this article will say they're not states, but states is just a condition. And so I would not agree with that part. They're not states in the same sense of nations, but they are states in the sense of condition. And they are surveillance states. And you can keep plugging into them and others. We talked about plugging into, instead of Facebook and Google, go to Minds.com and DuckDuckGo or Start Page. You think those may not be controlled at some point, if they maybe not already are, and they're just not told to the people that promote them to be neutral? I don't know where the depth of this goes. The point is, there's nothing that's really digital that's not trackable, traceable, and controllable. It's a facade on top of it. It's another dimension of all this. Did we need the former executive to tell us they're surveillance states? Well, we didn't, but here the one is. So they tell you this, and what are you going to do about it? Probably nothing. Now, I do what I can, but probably nothing ultimately. I literally block everything I can that Google would provide, short of YouTube. In fact, that's a big complaint, that people are coming on with these blockers. I try not to encourage anything with these companies at all. I rarely, unless it's someone that I appreciate beyond measure, to understand where they're going and what they're doing, I will not click on a Facebook link. If you can't put it somewhere else, I'm not going to go look at it. I make it like in it. I guess maybe people don't agree with me, and so they don't want to be my friend. I said I will not use Skype. You know how few people I communicate with now because I'm not on Skype, and how few things happen because I'm not on Skype? I'm kind of outcast because I've made a very definite provision there. I went to what we call decentralized things that are mostly encrypted. How many people followed? Hardly anybody. And so it's become an impediment, and I don't know what to do about that. I've decided I'm not going to engage that part. I'm not going to give them that much credit. As I've told you, I do have something to hide. I do have something to hide from insane people that make stuff up. I do have enough action that's going on. Evolutionary engagement, I've heard someone call it, that I don't want them to know. I want everything to be a surprise attack. I want them to be responding after the fact. And I want them to start understanding that we're so far down the attack line, they won't keep up with us. There's nothing they can bring that we're not going to be ahead of. And we don't tell them that. I don't tell anybody that. Sometimes I am ahead, sometimes I'm not. When I am ahead, be careful. You're not going to have enough answers. I'm not talking to the listeners. I'm talking to those that may come against us. It's like simple little knowledge. Well, the argument that logging causes fires was really a lie because what's causing the fires is the mistreated slash. That's a simple little quick, I did that in 15 seconds to tell you that? That's a quick little piece of knowledge to know when these guys come along and say, well, harvesting is no good. It causes fires. I'm done with the problem in 15 seconds, and I've identified that one as a liar. I don't have to call him a liar. And I'm on to the next point of where I was at. I'm not dissuaded from my position. I'm not knocked off my focus. And you shouldn't either. But are we surprised that an executive would come out and talk about Facebook? No, I've also told you there's 2 points. First, we're not surprised, and secondly, what is the second one, folks? It doesn't matter because you're not using it. How's that? Oh, wait a minute, maybe you are. And maybe that's again our problem. Maybe we haven't really taken all this very seriously. Maybe we think we know so much that we know a lot and we know enough. And I'm suggesting try to put that into practice. How many people actually understand what an ex post facto law is that they can identify it currently to use as a defense against a claim? How about a bill of attainder? Or what's more appropriate to most people regarding seizures would be the bills of pains and penalties. Who knows that? How do you affect that? Do you know? Oh, you can recite it. It's not supposed to happen. How do you affect it? What do you use to affect those? Does anybody that's listening to me actually understand? And if not, what do you think you're learning and what for? As I was talking to a couple people, I asked people questions to qualify certain things: the knowledge, the capacity, the ability to replicate. I do lots of things because I'm having to look kind of down the road for people that are coming along. And if I find that you can't respond to a question, I'm not judging the fact of that. I'm saying for you, if you can't answer that question, then you're incapable to do what you've planned on doing here. So we have to know that so you don't walk yourself into a problem. This is not a judgment of your incapacity. You have the incapacity. But how's that going to harm you on your mission, on what you want to make right, the wrong you want to make right, the harm that's coming against you? Do you have an understanding of that? Do the county commissioners understand the police power sufficiently that says they didn't even need to get Zinke's help? But now that they've got it, they understand as a license to go ahead and now run as fast as the wind will take them ahead of the fire. Do they know that? Do they understand the Constitution that way? Rather than more than just putting your hand on your heart and doing a pledge of allegiance to an inanimate object, which they didn't understand, and then since 1954, some foreign power called God indivisible. Did you miss that one, folks? Do people really understand what's right in front of them? I really have to doubt it. Those of you that get it, I'm not talking to you certainly. But those that don't and think you got it, you really have to rethink about what you're doing, what you're up to, what's happening. You're not helping the condition to think that you're helping the condition. Again, as I say, it's just not having knowledge. It's what you do, how you do it. And behind which we try to find where we can do more right. It's not just thinking, we got this handled. Because I'll tell you, when you get in the real world, the war is an interesting and unpredictable place. And one of the answers is to make more predictable responses. You force someone, it's like a chess game, I suppose, as it just flashed in my mind. You can force someone to have to move a certain way. In that anything else they do is even a worse condition that you put them in. They know that. And this is kind of how this works. The war's not over. The battle's not won. But you can make conditions set up that you can force someone's hand. And you essentially can't win on that move, but you can win because of the inabilities that they couldn't cover. And a lot of that for us is black and white law and the knowledge of the methods of the enemy. So the enemy is wanting to get you into this digital technocratic world. Are you walking grumbling about it and crying and decrying it, but walking ever so much the same? walking into it anyway, or are you literally working at with every fiber of your being to make it limited, make obstructions, and then take actions to interfere with it all? It's quite a role to play here, if this is a stage. And what is your role? You're going to be part of the audience that's part of the play? Remember, the audience is part of the play. Breads and circuses is part of the play. Is that your part? Or are you on stage being the one that is vociferous in your objection, but walking as an accessory to the own crime against you? You can play that part too. You're playing a part. You can deny it, it's still happening. You're playing your part. You're not playing the part, and you're allowing the problems. You're allowing all the complaints you have. You don't like something happening? Fix it. Make it. You got something you got to do creatively? Make it. Stop complaining that it doesn't exist. So they plug you in, you plug yourself in, and they take control. How about if we stop plugging ourselves in? How about if we stop putting ourselves subject to the next new thing that's actually it's a tool for us to take up that's actually used against us? The other thing, another types of deception as we move along on this, the officials that have you think you're hearing things from these officials, like, did we need this official coming out of Google to tell us? No. Do we get any information out of him? Well, we do, maybe a confirmation, if we can trust him. I don't know what he all said there. It didn't really matter to me. I didn't need to hear more. I just don't use their stuff. I don't use their product. Sometimes you can't help it. You got it because it's government. It has the power to hurt you. It has the power to waste your time. Another type of information coming out of the officials, someone with experience on the inside. This Mueller probe, has red-hot focus on social media, officials say. Now remember, we just said Facebook's a surveillance state, so Mueller, on the probe against Trump and the Russian, done it, and all that other inside stuff, the fraud, the witch hunt that seems to be, and it's all just for our entertainment if you're following it. I don't even follow it that much to even be able to describe it so well. Not like some other people that do documentaries that will tell you all about this stuff. It's all irrelevant, but they'll tell you all about it, and you'll think there's such a great amount of a great documentarian to explain it all to you. You don't have the time, the respect in your own self to go find out in a few seconds instead of wasting your time for 20, 30, 40 minutes, an hour, whatever it is. Maybe you're wasting your time even behind the woodshed if you're that intelligent and figured it out. Because there's nothing I can tell you because you already got the wrong you're going to make right, and you understand it, and you're on your way, and you're just hitting the every place you need to be. You don't need to listen to me, but we got to listen to these people if we're still looking around. Here we just told that Facebook is a surveillance state. It's a condition. Certainly is. You plug yourself into it. Mueller, from this report in the United States government probe, has red hot focus on social media. They went right to Facebook. Facebook officials likely to face Congress, key lawmakers say. It's Russia still ramping up cyber espionage, intelligence chief. There's two little things. What I focused on in this was the red hot focus was these people come out and tell us information that we really already know and don't need to have. Well, what's a red hot focus on social media? How important was that? And I tweeted out a response just to hopefully highlight the inanity of this. Is red hot focus more important than a cold, hard stare at social media relative to what he's supposed to be doing? Red hot focus on social media proves it's a surveillance state. But what's the purpose behind this as well? It just shows you the witch hunt or the breads and circuses, the circus around this whole nonsense. All they could come up with is that he has a red hot focus. And I just thought about it. Well, wouldn't you really want a cold, hard stare if that's really all you're doing anyway? What's more important? He assumes it's a red hot focus. Does that get us any further down the road? Does that change anything? Does that expose a problem so we can fix it? No. Make work. It's just doing nothing. They've agreed they have nothing more to do than choose to do a red hot focus on social media instead of choose to do a cold hard stare. Next. What's the truth behind all this digital stuff? How do they keep us working? What's the nonsense behind how they've gone into all this and made it work? I mean, I don't know if you all were thinking about it. When I started to find out better about the internet, I came to it kind of late. But at the time I came to it, I was also in video. And I said, wouldn't this be cool? And this is before YouTube. Wouldn't it be cool if we could put these videos on the internet? Wouldn't it be cool that we could post and make comments and all that and interact? Wouldn't that be neat? And I thought about doing that before YouTube was even thought of. Not to say that I was there. I'm just saying that was my focus. I was in video. I said, wouldn't that be neat if I could put that on the internet and show people from there? I looked at it and I could not figure out a way to fund it because I realized my rudimentary knowledge of what it was. It would take money, a lot more money than I could pull together. I'm not a money guy. I'm not in venture capital. I didn't know anybody. In fact, I moved away from all that. It wasn't in my system. And because I didn't have the money, I couldn't go forward. Within about a year and a half, we hear the first rudiments of YouTube happening. And I said, that's it. That's what I wanted to do. And I've watched what they do, and then Google buys it. And I said, uh-oh, we got a problem. We got a problem. This whole thing was set up for another reason. Not what I wanted to do with it, but that's what's going on. And how did they do it? They had some smart people, a lot smarter than me, figured out if you can sell time, and we can promote that we actually give you return on your advertising buck. That you as a company wanting to sell your product would send me money providing a service. I'm not that, folks. I wasn't that smart to figure that out. But then again, I'm an honest kind of guy, so kind of guy. I'm not thinking of the ways to be devious about this. And so maybe that's why it didn't occur to me. I didn't understand how it would be legitimate that these advertising dollars were legitimately spent honestly for what they intended. And so years and years later, we have this story. The promotions of this digital technocracy are a lie no matter where you look, and here's more evidence. Hey, advertisers, the data mining emperor has no clothes. When a big advertiser pulls its online adverts and its sales remain unchanged, that tells everyone who's paying attention something important. I think that says it all. Again, this was from Charles Hughes Smith blogspot. Very insightful. He pulls the information together again. And he shows us that this was all a lie. All this digital, there's just no way you look at this digital revenue advertising claim that can actually support itself, actually. You can't reach the people that you think you were through that medium the way it's been promoted. It's been a scam. But it's been a successful scam. People plugged into it. People started to bring it. It's like a currency. As soon as people started to adopting it, there's billions and billions. I can't get this, folks. I don't understand it, but here it is. Billions of dollars that go into this system. Why Google has become so big. Why Facebook becomes so big. But it's all on a scam. The surveillance state is a surveillance state. It works off the scam. And it works off you plugging into it. And these companies are not coming to terms with the fact that all the billions they've been spending may not be able to get to the people that they want, as well as it's never has, as well as all the problems that creep up like bot clicking. The data mining emperor has no clothes. I found this story to be problematic, though. Though it exposes the lie of the revenue advertising power, I don't think that the data miner emperor has no clothes more than the revenue generator theory had no clothes, because the data miner is what they're there for. Some people have denounced that there's any data on there that they can get from you that can mean anything. I've seen enough to know that's contrary to what, when you find out the government might be after it, or people may have sinister plan for you, or they want to control your mind, like we find out happens in the voting. This becomes a more sinister application that I don't think we can disregard. And if we plug into that, we allow confidence in that, we are breaching our own trust in ourselves, in our own responsibility. So this says that this revenue enhancement, data mining, revenue enhancement for the corporations is all, the digital internet providers is really all based in scams and models that were promoted like any other snake oil. And my interest to you in this is look at the money they did generate on selling that much snake oil and continuing so. And then we see the fallout over, well, now when those advertisers make a claim that they can't now advertise because of something you said and you posted your videos, that all of a sudden the purge starts to happen. They're trying to cover the scam. They're trying to keep their numbers viable so that people will be sold these supposedly really intelligent corporate CEOs handing their delegation of authority to spend money for promoting their products to other people, that they can cover their tail for the fact that they've actually been spending billions of dollars and wasting it, handing it to these companies that were taking advantage. These companies that are selling you a product are just as susceptible to the snake oil salesmen of the days of yore. Pretty fascinating how this revolution comes back around. So in this story, I found a little bit of a problem. I don't think the data mining emperor wears no clothes. I think the revenue, power, advertising, money, value wears no clothes. And you can go read, read this information. Think about what people say. That people have pretty interesting insights, things I won't normally think about myself because I'm focused on what I do. That I can read in a quality set of information and pull out certain ideas. Here, it doesn't mean I agree completely, but I'm able to make that determination, and part of it because that digital provider didn't censor that information for me. I'm allowed to make that decision up for myself. So all these companies also, besides the surveillance state, that are purging people, I find that interesting on the surveillance side because now you're not going to surveil them. Those people are gone. But who are you focusing on? And what is their power? And don't ever forget it's always a scam. And so everything offered digitally can be this scam. And I'm back to Bitcoin. I'm back to cryptocurrencies. Its scam is a plan. No different than Google's scam was a plan to make money. The government's scam is totally different. And the earmarks of literally global governance and this scam deception is his fingerprints are all over it. Speaking about fingerprints, how about your face print, folks? In this digital surveillance state of control that you keep plugging yourself into. I understand there's a $1,000 iPhone X that just hit the market. Now, I couldn't afford a $10 iPhone X, but it doesn't matter. I probably wouldn't buy it anyway. Siri. Can Siri help me here? Apple's new Face ID could be a powerful mass supply spying tool. Apple's new Face ID could be a powerful mass spying tool. You think, folks? Do you think? Do I actually have to read more? Oh, we talked about Google and Facebook. Don't forget Apple. I still think they're one of the richest, if you will, we can call it richest corporations in the world. And they've just upped the price of their phone with all this new surveillance technology to $1,000, and you'll pay for it. We hardly have two nickels to rub together behind the woodshed, so I don't know how I'm going to be. I'm going to be one of those cashless people in Bangladesh when the cashless society hits, if it's not already starting. You're going to find me out in the garbage dumps, picking up what food I can fight from the dogs, and what things I can fix to sit on, tin cans I can cut and open up for my roof shingles. Yeah, but you go buy that $1,000 phone and then wonder, will the Face ID within it be a mass spying tool? You think, folks? You think they just give us stuff to you? Oh, I don't have one of those phones. Well, you're not safe. It doesn't matter. This is the future of how this works. You don't denounce it. Your simple answer to Apple is let them make up all those phones and then don't go buy them. Just stop the nonsense. Put your $1,000 in somebody local. Go buy a bunch of string and find tin cans. Don't cut those tin cans open for roof shingles. Use them whole and stick a piece of the newfound string you found and then communicate that way maybe for a while. Stop plugging in. Stop taking the advice of all these federal agencies and their criminal and arsonist fire policies, the companies that scam other companies for the dollars, that scam you for the information that may not mean anything to anybody anyway, and then the government that sits behind there that allows it all that might actually be using it for future use. Where this digital the information can go wherever. How do we know where it's going? Who's using it? The companies that were protecting you in your so-called credit scores last week, we hear, are actually using the theft of your information to exploit from you, the customer that you didn't know you were. When does this nonsense make sense enough that you continue to accept it? I don't know. Where does this information go? Well, I don't know. It's all dealt with in the IT side, isn't it? All the internet technicians, the people that run the servers and the server farms and all this other stuff. Who is under threat? Who is compromised? Who are these people coming out to tell us stuff? Why did they come out and tell us this stuff? It may sound like it's exposing stuff, but did they do it because it's a plan, or did they do it because they're forced to because there's a secondary plan afoot? I don't know. Are they hiding crimes? We're talking about this thing. How do you know now? You see that everyone's vulnerable. The government people, the politicians are vulnerable. Who's compromised to what and for what and by whom? I just remembered it was a response on Twitter. Something came through. I think Gary L. sent me something or sent out something, and I happened to see it. That everyone seems to be compromised. But how? By whom? For what purpose? We cannot tell. And yet we allow the condition to be honest. We allow that system to allow us to be plugged into it. Oh, we can deny it's there, but it still has power to hurt us, and we don't take steps anywhere else to curtail it, is our other problem. A secret server is behind law enforcement's decision to ban a former IT aide to Republican Debbie Wasserman Schultz from the House network. Now indicted former congressional IT aide Imran Awan allegedly routed data from numerous House Democrats to a secret server. Police grew suspicious and requested a copy of the server early this year, but they were provided with an elaborate falsified image designed to hide the massive violations. The falsified image is what ultimately triggered their ban from House Network February 2nd, according to the senior House official with direct knowledge of the investigation. This story not only exposing a really nasty underbelly to this whole Democratic, Russian done it, election tampering, Democratic Party inside job, torpedoing Sanders nonsense, was all driven by an IT guy who was siphoning off information with the name, and if I don't sound so racist here, Imran Awan. I think he's from Pakistan. If I'm wrong, fix that. He's not from here. And he is one of the people that are involved with all this. It sounds like the self-inflicted wound again. We're supposed to be at war with terrorists. We're told it's a war of terror, a war on terror, and I tell you it's a war on terror. This is it. This is explaining that these people are inside the system, siphoning data off. Let's just add this. How do you know that the IT guys from whatever company are not siphoning data off to anywhere else? Is another hidden problem. To me, it's not even about this story. It just shows how the caucusocracy continues to be what it is. Secret servers. There's supposed to be a bunch of checks on all this. Isn't there any control beyond that? Isn't there supposed to be another officer looking over this shoulder? Isn't there the inspector generals that periodically peek in just to verify compliance with federal law? Well, apparently not, folks, until the cops are on the hunt. after the fact. And this is another truth. They're not there to help you. They're there to take the history lesson. Let me remind you, remember the power outage caused by the easy pay that was supposed to check that they couldn't get at, that couldn't cut the power, and the power cut couldn't get them to put their easy pay back up to keep the power going. You're looking at that problem right here. Now this report came up to me, this is showing you this data is not secure. I don't care what we do about it. I don't care how this works. You can keep plugging yourself into Bitcoin thinking how anonymous it is and how it's decentralized. This is all nonsense stuff eventually. It all has to go through servers somewhere. Oh, but it'll be encrypted. It doesn't matter. In fact, I'm finding out that if they can just find the router trafficking, they don't care actually what's going on. They fabricate what they need from what they call that metadata, and there's probably other stuff that I'm not even paying attention to. And thanks to a listener on something on this story I don't even hardly report on at all, but because of the data problem for us and showing us there are secret servers. If you're thinking that the world is all peachy keen and everything's cool, you got nothing to hide. You're talking about insane people that make stuff up and have a very criminal way about what they go do and the purposes for what they do it, that you may be involved in without your knowledge. That listener sent an email to call my attention to somebody that's on this Awan scandal thing. I think his name is here, George Webb. You'll have a link. And I can't keep up with all the information that's there, and this guy proved it to me. But I wanted to point this out, more importantly than whatever, making an analysis of what he's doing. I wanted to point out this is what you do when you find the wrong you need to make right. This guy is all over the story. He's got nooks and crannies and rabbit trails and all rabbit hole, whatever you want to call it. He's got all this thing all over. And he sounds a little bit out there, but they're actually not so much out there when he can tie it together. The problem is stepping inside his whirlwind. Now, I couldn't really do it, but I got to see a couple videos. And he's got it together for himself. Whether it's not actually accurate, that has to be what you find important and go track down with him and do for yourself if this is important. My point about George and being focused on him, and thank you to the listener that pointed me to him, this is a guy doing something. Right, wrong, or indifferent. He's on this like white on rice. How racist that now is. He's all over this thing. My observation about what he's doing, he's also in the courts, and he's doing some interesting things. My only observation is some words that he said. I'm not so sure they understand the demand upon what they think they're doing, that they needed a different style of approach, a different type of information to perfect the ability to do the remedy. And this is what I'm talking about earlier when I said, you know the Constitution, and you know about, let's say the ex post facto law, the bill against a bill of attainder, no impairment of contracts, but how do you effectuate that in the system? It's there to do, but do you know what that takes? And this is really the only thing I don't know, whether George and the guys that are helping him or the women that are helping him have that. I heard some things that weren't spoken to that would be needed to be known for all the stuff this guy says, to effectuate what he is doing as a force and effect, or identify that he can't go in that way to effectuate what he knows. I heard enough to show that he said that if he put that in order in the proper way, he did have an avenue. And so I just have questions in the observations. I've got no proof, but my purpose for talking to you about this is that what we find is open corruption, the caucustocracy that's being laid before us, the digital vulnerabilities being laid before us, our continuous plugging into all that, the fact that you got to do something against us. Somebody on this one point is on that, and they are attempting to do what they know as they know. But if they don't do it right, you're seeing the evidence that they won't get what they thought they could get. And they'll get the wrong answer for the right answer for the wrong question. Not a criticism of this gentleman. It's just that if he wants to go where he wants to go, like you may want to go somewhere, you're going to have to understand what it takes to get there. You have to know that that journey before you go. It's got to know the destination before you get there. And my hat's off to the guy, however he's perceived. I would hope that he has a better knowledge. They can file the paperwork, but I'm just wondering if he understands how the mechanism is. And in one case, let me just offer, so that it's an idea of what maybe to see. They're attempting to enter into what appeared to me to be a criminal case as an intervener. Very interesting idea. But without the standing, and apparently his statement that he was a witness, the public that wants to make sure that justice will occur. And that's why he has the right to intervene with what he has found is being not presented by the government. Very interesting theory to enter in. What he didn't do was support that point that he had the right to be there. And in most criminal cases, without the very particular statements and facts stated about your right to be there, you will be dismissed. And so his trail will go cold quickly, though he will continually put in reconsiderations or appeals and all this. It's a waste of time at that point if he hasn't done those very couple of things. And that what they've chosen is a very difficult thing. So I don't judge them and say, no, that you're nuts. No, there's a very exacting way that you have to go about that if you can. But he has another option that he doesn't mention that would give him the standing. He speaks to it, though I haven't heard all the elements for it. I don't have the facts. If he has the elements, he can make the development that would make him more able to have standing to intervene on that case. And it works through, and I won't make a comment to it because I don't want to say much, that you'd have to find this on your own. It works through the collusion he knows is going on. I heard enough to hear a number of elements that would bring up another right of his to go in and have standing underneath a provision of law that Congress has provided for him, and all of you all, when you find this unlawful collusion being done. And so I wanted to make this comment that we have things we could be doing. There's ways to work it out. There's ways to make better approaches and get the remedies we want done. Our knowledge of the thing, his knowledge of all the corruption that it sounds like he's finding is not enough. It's how he works that the remedies through what he knows. He uses those things he knows to empower his right to be there. He still has to figure out how he has the right to be there on his own for his cause. And I would add, for those similarly situated, since we're now talking really more into the writ system, although his cause is not a writ system-based system, so don't get focused on that. It works in the collusion he can find, the criminal collusion. The collusion is not a crime, so it's not a problem. But criminal collusion would be. So, again, hats off to George Webb, what he's doing. Don't know. I hear some things. I hope he gets empowered about those. But this is the point about you seeing something that you want to make right. To me, this is George or whatever he's doing is not crickets here. It's an example to you. Figure out how he's working it. You get as passionate as he is and knowledgeable about the subject matter and get people around you. I hear he's got some people. I don't know who they are. I just hear what he speaks and refers to other people. There's people he's working in alliance with. This is what I've been asking about. And again, thank the emailer to call my attention to this. I can't drop myself into the middle of it. It will do me no good to do so anyway, to understand more. But I think I understand enough, and I would give my support to his effort until I'm shown that the guy is completely insane. And I don't think he is, to tell you the truth, after I see this other nonsense that's built up around all these things that he can point out to you. The point is, he's an example. Now, he's also an example of maybe not quite fulfilling the proper engagement, but that's not to a judgment against him. That's just something he'll have to figure out, and the people around him will have to figure out. And then now we get to the point: you can figure it out? Then can you still breach that corruption that's systemic? That's another point. But you don't not do it because of that. That's where I tell you that's when you start exampling that the whole system is the way it is because the system is corrupt, and we were not supposed to allow that to happen. See, a lot of people go in with this expectation that justice reigns supreme. It doesn't, folks. It's a big criminal conspiracy that's working against you. And there's certain things you can do to work your way through it, kind of like a filtering medium. This whole thing's a deep pressuring system to keep the lid on the pressure of the people being disgruntled, but it also has ways that you filter through yourself through that membrane in order to reach the other side to expose that you had to go through the membrane at all. That's on a bigger level. That's on the national level or the governmental level. As I think about it, what I was talking about earlier in the broadcast, that's on the local level that those governments are part and parcel to doing the thing that needs to be done. That's action on the ground. And we're talking about using, what did I say, folks? Police power. What was the main word there? Not police. It's the word power. Power is where you work from. Without power in these things of law, you have nothing. Find the power and possess it. Is how you work that. And it's why I went directly to, as we acknowledge the United States of America and its uniqueness, the government does have this thing that sounds like it's an awesome weapon. It certainly is. But it's also a limited weapon. It's not used. It's being used. It's been abused. But this police power is the thing that the governments have that allow the government to handle what they call demonstrable exigence. Something very particular that does a general harm that is typically short-lived that needs the power of the state to come to bear on it. Not what they do. We're making zoning rules because your activity becomes a threat to us. That's not how that works. But I used a power in order to show something that cannot be assailed by anyone. And that's where you start learning to put yourself. Find the power point. And I'm not talking about a Microsoft presentation. So this whole system keeps working on the corruption and continuing it and not being exposed, and we have to have people in there witnessing the corruption and being able to stand long against it and find the right ways to bring it out. One thing that George Webb is doing on this problem, he's certainly making a record for all y'all to see. And that's where I say at least you have that power yourself to start being that record, that witness to other people. But all of this is a war against us. Surveillance state, the war, or the tool, the weapon of fire against you, the things that are done, police becoming militarized. Now that's just obvious. And all the excuses, remember, these are excuses that come with all this. Which, in fact, Google starts covering up on their snake oil scam. The excuses that come with the truth and the excuses that are used in order to impose upon you a fear that legitimizes your fear, that the other side uses as a license to continue to cause the fear and constrain you. This is one of those in-our-face but subtle controls. This is like a broad spectrum, broad dimensional war against us, the people, men and women. And we're responsible to stop it. But we're going to continue to be the human guinea pig or farm animal to be managed as long as we continue to respond that way. We found more evidence now. Remember, I've said that this becomes real to you in the streets. They've hidden the fact of this military occupation by calling it civil society and calling it police, community service and all this other thing. And they've put a nice mask on it. And but I've told you it's going to adjust. It's going to adjust to be more obvious. And they're going to make things that they'll state things, they'll make excuses that they'll use you to allow them to move it forward, and you'll say nothing more. That I said that they'll cause crises. Crisis doesn't go to waste. And they'll use your fallen nature against you. They'll use your ignorance against you in order to advance what they plan to put on us. And one way, it's already on us, but they couldn't let you know about it. But we're come to a time when the wraps are off, and the M wraps are off, I guess, as well. The wraps are off, and they're going to be making it way more obvious because they have to do like what China does in the world. They have to show you direct power, and I'm now talking not the law power, why a government can step in and protect all of us against a demonstrable exigence, that thing that will hurt everybody indiscriminately, like health, cholera, or forest fire, and that kind of thing. But the power to harm you directly, like kill you. This is the type of power I'm talking now. It's just the abuse of that as well. Terror threat level raised to critical after bucket bomb attack. Again, the snake oil from Google and Facebook saying they can advertise is this advertisement here, that the terror threat level raised to critical after a bucket bomb attack. This is going to, in London streets, this is going to now be used to introduce this Operation Temperer. Where they get these words, folks, I don't know. And we will see their soldiers replacing police at key sites, including nuclear power plants, to free up extra armed officers for regular patrols. So here we have a snake oil. This is about the war of terror, utilizing the war on terror facade and snake oil to say that we can arbitrarily we'll just say this is a critical threat now because we found this so-called bucket bomb. So here we are, tail wagging the dog, wringing our nose, accessories to the crimes against us, and the plausible excuses they use to advance the military state in at least UK, obviously, and that's around the corner for, if it's not in other places, it's certainly around the corner for all y'all so-called first world nations. You just watched how they just did it. You've been watching how they do it before. They bring on these Hebdo things, and all of a sudden France lost all their civil rights, so-called. Well, their civic rights, I should say. Civil liberties, I guess I should say better. Civil rights here in the United States we know are extortions of every kind. And so this military state, this military world, is really fostered and encouraged by deception. We know them by their fruits, folks. We know them by their acts, more than their words, that we know them by their deeds. And so for all of us that aren't quite convinced yet about the United States military being in control of the world because it's just a global brute, and it has certain sensibilities to match, but it's pretty well dashing almost all of those daily. We now find more proof, if you are open to it, to see that this war against us, the United States Defense Department is actually the War Department. Don't ever forget that little rebranding. That the bombshell, so-called bombshell report, clickbait right there, folks, get you to click, click, click. But bombshell report catches Pentagon falsifying paperwork for weapons transfer to Syrian rebels. Falsifying paperwork. Evidence. The trail of evidence is in paperwork. That's important to see there. But this is the point, is that the Pentagon now is involved. This is just not some idea. It's not just the CIA. This is the entire War Department utilizing the Syrian rebels to overthrow a democratic government, to go and install democracy and rule of law, which all is a lie. All a lie. On Tuesday, the Organized Crime Corruption Reporting Project and the Balkan Investigation Reporting Network produced conclusive evidence that not only is the Pentagon currently involved in shipping up to 2.2 billion Bravo worth of weapons from a shady network of private dealers to allied partners in Syria, mostly old Soviet weaponry, but it is actually manipulating paperwork such as end-user certificates, presumably in order to hide U.S. involvement. Well, regardless, why would they be involved? Why would they be changing paperwork at all? And is it a question that the United States ever created that the rebels as a tool to take out the sovereign nation of a people and their government over this implausible excuse of forcing on them this democracy and rule of law? Do we need, again, we know them by their deeds, not by what they say. do we need? How much more long are we going to need this proof? It's over and over. They're working with organized criminals. You're judged by those you associate with, the people, the friends you keep. The Pentagon works with organized criminal syndicates in order to advance the weapons. What is the Pentagon? If I have another way to prove what it is that's going on. Pentagon busted working organized crime to funnel billions in weapons to terrorists. But I thought it was the terrorists that caused this. Well, yeah, but you focused on the wrong ones. You don't think the box cutter dropped those buildings? You think a box cutter took down Building 7? No. This is an organized criminal syndicate called the Pentagon pulling off the deception of the millennia, I think. To go about and beat down on people just cause, I suppose. I can't see any just cause. It's got to be just cause. They go on all these people. A lot of it's the dollar that's been tied in. They want to go after that, to control some of the weapons. We know that they're tied into Agenda 2030. They want people migrating. They want the herds migrating around, causes instability. Mob rule, that's your democracy. From the military standpoint, that's democracy. Having all your people running around doing nothing constructive. Making war on your own people, that's not outside of it. We talk about all this stuff. It's all just here. I said the MRAPs are coming off, folks. There's nothing being hidden anymore. The truth is being revealed to us. And I hear crickets, and I don't know what to do more about that than feel flabbergasted because I ain't that smart. What else do I do? So Monday I'll turn around and I'll keep focusing on the projects I got. Hopefully, maybe we'll have some policies come out of the counties that will stop the fires around us, and we'll start our life coming back to a better way because we took control of it. So fiat systems and Bitcoin to me is an oxymoron for people that are supposed to be libertarian-minded and agree Bitcoin but not fiat. Venezuela has officially abandoned the petrodollar. Does this make war with Venezuela more likely? Well, probably economic war for sure. But here we have it. Even Venezuela, the nation, is understanding, don't buy into the crime. We're going to now not use your petrodollar. Boy, that's put a much bigger mark on them for sure. But the point in this story wasn't just the headline. Wasn't even it wasn't any of about any of it. More than stop engaging the tools of destruction against you. And you will find quickly who the bully in the world is and how bad life really is. This is not a joke. And this is something everyone has to be cognizant of identifying. Oh yeah, Kim Jong-un, he's got his little basket of missiles he's firing off, and the United States, Uncle Sam, has got a pile of missiles, and Uncle Sam's looking on the pile of his missiles, a little picture I saw pointing down to Kim Jong-un's little basket of missiles, one little basket of missiles, one holding it crunched into the ground, and he's saying, how dare you have missiles? Is the lunacy we're living in and through and in our name. That I would hope any of you would find some place to find the wrong in all this to make right. I hope today I've said something to you to inspire that. Go look for it, find it, do the proper way. Don't put yourself in jeopardy, but still make it work. Grimner, thank you very much today for all your help. RealLibertyMedia.com and the archives and the blogcaster and all that stuff and all the stuff you do in the chat and over there, Freedom's Network as well. And Bo Diddy, I hope you're all right. I haven't heard too much from you in the last few months. Maybe support Freedom's Network as well. It's always cost of support here, folks, even though I don't ask for it behind the Woodshed. And Jules over at UCY and Clint starting up his new broadcast right after this one. You won't know about that on Thursday or in any recast, but those of you live today on the broadcast know right after my broadcast. Hopefully we can get that, have him move right before me so we have live all the way through on Sunday on UCY. It'll be kind of cool. As I am syndicated there, thank you, Jules, for that. I'll be here next week, Tech Diffs, and Nature Willing.
Well, that's another lesson. I hope with today's information you can take it to those that misbehave. From behind the woodshed, leaving his mark on the beast, this is Hal Anthony. Till next time, journey with purpose.
That's what opening up a can of whoop-ass feels like.
Son, you just opened a whole case of whoop-ass.